Hi everyone. As of today, I have been self-isolating / trapped in my tiny 350 square foot apartment for 67 days. How are you guys doing? Hi everyone, and welcome back to Big City B. I'm B for those of you who are just joining us for the first time. Let's get started on today's book review. For today, I'm going to be reviewing Bottle Grove by Daniel Handler, or who you may know better as Lemony Snicket. The genre for this book is going to be contemporary fiction, and make sure you check out the description below for any trigger warnings. Alrighty, on to your summary. This is a story about two marriages, or is it? It begins with a wedding held in the small San Francisco forest of Bottle Grove. Here is a cross-section of lives, a stretch of urban greenery where ritzy guests, lustful teenagers, drunken revelers, and forest creatures all wait for the sun to go down. Moving along to the characters for this book, our main characters are going to be Paget Bottle, who goes by Gail, Martin Ike, who runs the bar Bottle Grove, and Renard, who is the vicar at the wedding and later a creature of the forest Bottle Grove itself. For track 2 characters, we have Rachel and Ben Nichols, who are the couple we see getting married at the very beginning of the book. We also see Nina, who is Reynald's date at the beginning. And lastly, the Vic, who is the small town celebrity. He's a big wig in the tech industry and takes a liking to a certain one of our characters. Let's dive on into what I liked about this book. The first thing that I liked about this book was the magical realism elements that we have. If you don't want any spoilers, you can stop right there and check the description below to see when spoilers end, or if you don't really care that much, here are your spoilers. So the part that held the magical realism was that Renard, gotta get that right, French R. Renard starts to turn into a tricky, seductive fox, and I like this a lot because I have learned a little bit more about different mythologies, and this ties in really nicely to Japanese folklore, where the fox is seen as the trickster and can often shapeshift in those stories as well. So I thought that was a nice little callback to the Japanese folklore. Unfortunately, that's all I had that I liked about this book, so let's go on over to what I didn't like about this book. The first thing that I didn't like was, although it was written by Daniel Handler and not Lemony Snicket, I felt like the Lemony Snicket writing style was very much present, and for me didn't really work in this book. With those of us who grew up with a series of unfortunate events, I'll be the first to say that I wasn't a huge fan of the series of unfortunate events series when I was growing up. My brother really liked those books, but I couldn't get into them. I stopped I think after the 3rd or 4th, and I think there's 13. Even at a young age, I didn't really like Lemony Snicket's writing style. But anyway, going back, what is present in the Lemony Snicket series is very much kind of wandering, meandering sentences that are a little bit whimsical, and that was very much present in this book. And for me, if you are going to write under your real name and not a pseudonym, then I want a difference in your writing style. And if this is going to be more marketed to adults, and I think especially this book was marketed to adults who grew up with the series of fortunate events series, but I needed that separation because the subject matter that we're dealing with in this story is more serious, and I just felt like the whimsicality of the sentences it took away from the story. Also, it was a lot of circular sentences, so we would go off on a tangent. We would start the sentence, we would go off on a tangent, and then we would circle back around, and then the sentence would end. And it was like every sentence was like that, but instead of actually getting any substance from these sentences, it was annoying. And I felt that, okay, I just felt like, okay, Daniel, okay, but come on, let's get to the point of the sentence here, please. So that was frustrating for me. The second thing that I didn't like was that I didn't like really any of these characters. Maybe this is because we weren't given the opportunity to really delve in and see what their underlying problems were, or really just anything that would make us like form a bond or feel any kind of sympathy for them. But everyone, in my opinion, I just felt like everyone had first world problems, and I was like, this is really annoying, and you're all really selfish, and you're playing unnecessary games. Like the whole Martin and Gail story, I was like, why is this happening? Then like the Vic, like I understand that he's supposed to be a lot of these tech figures that we have nowadays, but again, I was just like, why? None of the characters resonated with me, and I didn't connect to any of them, so it was difficult for me to continue to try to read the story because I didn't care. I didn't care if they lived, if they died, I didn't care. The third thing that I didn't like was that the magical realism in this book felt forced. It happens like in the later half of the book and kind of happens out of nowhere. There's been no kind of inkling or insight that we got during the first half of the book that this was possible in this world, and it just didn't make sense to me. Usually I'm totally a fan of any kind of magic or fantasy elements within a book, but this book made me realize it has to be justified in some way. You can't just like randomly throw in things, and this book did not justify any of the magical elements at all. They were thrown in. I felt they didn't add really to the story. I think he was trying to use this element as a way to see the inner lives or the real lives of people, but again, he didn't allow us to see enough of that, so it was just a literary device, and I was like, oh, there it is. Cool. So let's go on to quotes for this book. For these quotes, they're going to be a little different than in my past reviews. I can't really expand upon them because they're pretty specific to the book themselves, or I've never been to San Francisco. I have no frame of reference for one of these quotes. I don't know if I'm going to have a lot to say, and I'm just putting that out there for you guys. Anyway, your first quote. What kind of fool, Martin thinks, would give this dame the money first? Quote number 2. San Francisco is changing, but there are still these wild places. And Bottle Grove is crawling with creatures who get braver when the sun goes down. So yeah, I mean, again, I don't have any reference for what San Francisco is like, but I like these two quotes. I don't know why. I can't tell you why, but they just stood out to me. Okay, let's just get to it. This is gonna be a short review, I guess. Would I recommend this book? No, I wouldn't. This book had a lot of hype around it. Everyone was so excited to get another book by Lemony Snicket / Daniel Handler, and it just didn't live up to expectations. Like I'm not even showing you guys the Goodread reviews because they basically said what I said, that they were disappointed in the book, that they didn't care what happened to the characters, that they were all kind of selfish and whiny, just like on and on and on. It's a short book, but it took me so much longer than like when I read a long book. I can like finish that in a day or two, and this one I had to work on for like a week just because I would have to reread those circular sentences to actually get to the meat of like what I was actually supposed to be reading, and I didn't like it. I didn't like this one. Would not recommend to you. Just go ahead and skip it. Save yourself the time. If you're a Lemony Snicket fan, it's not even as good as the Series of Unfortunate Events series. So skip it. Alrighty guys, that's all I have for you this week. All the best always. Bye.